Here in the Vatican, we have to consider the artistic side and the religious one. Artistic side. The Dome of St. Peter's Basilica is 137 meters tall, unsupported structure, built in 40 years, inaugurated in 1537, projected by the genius of Michelangelo. So Michelangelo, architect, painter, sculptor, and we will see the three of them. This is Michelangelo, the architect. What does it mean 137 meters tall? That the Statue of Liberty of New York perfectly fits inside the Dome of St. Peter. That's, the Statue of Liberty is 950 meters, the Dome of St. Peter is 137. Unsupported, it means that's the biggest Lego brick game you will find in your life. Brick by brick, up to the very top, without any kind of support. Projected by Michelangelo, inaugurated in 1537, but guys, why so big? Because wherever we are, we have to ask why. The Dome of St. Peter is so big because 120 feet underground, under the Dome of St. Peter, there is the most important place in Rome, the grave of Peter. The most important for Catholics, the most important for Christians who come visit in the city, and that's why the Pope wanted the tallest structure of the city being on top of the grave of Peter. This way, if you were pilgrims coming to Rome in the 16th century, you didn't know Italian and nobody spoke your language, it was enough to follow the shape of the dome in order to find where was the grave of Peter. But, guys, who was Peter? We have to make a reflection about that, because Peter was the first apostle, the first follower of Jesus. And actually Peter came to Rome, but he wasn't Roman. Peter came to Rome, he was from the area of Jerusalem, from Israel. Actually he was a Hebrew, he was a Jewish. He came to Rome to spread Christian message, being missionary across Rome at that time. Rome was the capital of the world, 1,500,000 inhabitant city, 15 million of today. So Peter came to Rome in order to spread Christian message, but unfortunately the period in which he was coming to Rome wasn't a good period, because the emperor of Roman Empire was a cruel guy called Nero. Nero, some of you already heard about him, and if you heard about it, wasn't for a good reason. Nero was a criminal, he killed his mother, his wives, his best friend, but more than all, Nero was responsible of the fire of Rome. Now guys, I want to focus on this point. We don't know if Nero set the fire to the city, but Romans strongly and firmly believe that Nero was responsible. And for this reason, as the fire burned 80% of the city, and the victims were around 50,000, and Roman citizens were angry and looking for a responsible, Nero, pushed by the head of the secret service, the Prefectus Sertori, his name was Tigellino. Tigellino said, you know what, let's give the fault to the Christian community of Rome. Christian community was just raising up, Peter was in Rome, and Christians were considered responsible of the fire of Rome. Now we have a story. When I say we have a story, it means that's not history, guys, it's Christian tradition. And the story says that when Peter heard about the persecution, he decided to go away, but 4 miles distance, going back along the Appian Way, going outside the city, he met Jesus. He had a vision, because Jesus died 20 years before. He met Jesus, and he asked Jesus, who was walking back to Rome, Quo vadis, Domine? That means, where are you going, my Lord? Jesus smiled and said, Peter, I'm going back to Rome to be killed the second time. You don't want to die for me, I have to die for you for the second time. So Peter, understanding his mistake, moved back, went to Nero and said, I am Peter, head of Christians. If you are going to kill Christians, start with me. And Nero said, well, come, Peter, I will, for sure. But Peter added, I don't want to die on the cross like Jesus, because I don't want to be a second Jesus. I am not, I can't be. Don't worry, said Nero, I will kill you on the cross, upside down. And that's what happened, June 29 of 64 AD, in the middle of St. Peter's Square of today, that used to be the stadium of Nero. Now guys, until now, could look like story, but in the undergrounds, in the grottos of the Vatican, there is the body of Peter. What happened? The body was saved by Christians, was carried in a mausoleum, and then when the Emperor Constantine gave Christians freedom to practice, he built a big basilica, a big structure, on top of the place where was the original martyrdom of Peter. 2,000 years later, in a grotto underground, there is still the grave, 120 feet under the ground, with written on top, Eimi Petre, I am Peter. Now guys, it seems like that this grave was down there, but it sounds like a legend, not at all. In 1941, the Archaeological Commission of the Vatican opened the grave after 2 years of studies in order to check the best way to not make the body being destroyed by the contact with oxygen. Opening the grave, they found bones and they analyzed with carbon dating system. They are bones of a man, 65-70 years old, dead in the second half of the 1st century after Jesus, still dressed, still involved in a red and yellow color scarf, curtain. So, Saint Peter for Christians, somebody who perfectly fits in the description of Peter for non-Christians. I can tell you that 99.9% it's Peter, the man we worship, buried underground under the dome of Saint Peter. Door, the bronze-made door that you see here, is not closed with the keys. No, there is a door on the other side. Later on I will show you where are the Swiss guards if you want to ask them information, of course, but I suggest you to do it at the end of the tour, as when you go to the Swiss guard it means that you left the Basilica and you can't come back anymore. So I will show you where are them and they can go down there. The square of St. Peter, that's the place where St. Peter was killed, where today the Pope gives service. The famous balcony to where the Pope leans out is the one you see down there, in the middle of the facade. That's the balcony to where the Pope leans out at the end of the election and in special occasions. 94 statues of popes and saints all around the square, made by Gian Lorenzo Bernini and his school. St. Peter is completely stone-made. Peter, you are the rock where I will build my church. These were the words. It means marble for the wall and for the floor, mosaics for the interior design. Guys, in St. Peter Basilica there are 13 billions of colorful stones glued together in order not to make paintings, but to make only mosaics of stone, rock, all around the surface of the Basilica. We are going to enter inside the Basilica, and later on you will have time at the end of the tour to take a nice panoramic, seeing the square, the view, and also the long line of people that you can see starting on the right side, ending on the left side. This is the line of people that wants to enter the Vatican at this time without to skip the line. Around 3 miles long line to enter inside. So good choice, taking to skip the line in the Vatican. Well, each silver ladder is 2 meters, 7 feet tall, but it doesn't look like it, you can say. As we enter inside, our first stop will be on the right side, so keep following my flag. We are going on the right side and we're going to stop nearby La Pupilla of Michelangelo, the statue made by one single block of marble in 1498-1500. Going inside, this is crossing the body of Jesus that's represented by this door for Christian Catholic religion. You can see the letters we were talking about on top, each single letter 7 feet tall. Doesn't look like from this distance, but that's everything is covered with mosaics, in exception then for the top, including the dome here, the representation of St. Peter down there. Everything is made of small colorful stones glued together. 25,000 square meters surface, 13 billions of pieces, 150 years of works. This makes quite hard saying who did the mosaics. The mosaics have been made in 150 years by 3 different generations of artists, starting with Caravaggio and Pietro da Cortona, arriving up to Bernini and later on Vatican. 150 years of works for the decorations, for the interior design of St. Peter's Basilica. Anyway, St. Peter's Basilica is not only a beautiful place, it's not only beauty, but it's more than all religion. More than all, the importance of the ones who are buried here. We are going to visit one of the most interesting chapels. Most interesting because down there are 3 burials. John Paul II, Pius XI, the one who signed the agreement with Mussolini, and Pope Pius XII. They are in the chapel of Saint Sebastian that we're going to visit right now. Please notice that down there is a barrier. You can go over the barrier, but at the end of the tour without the radio, because in this church, as in any other church, they try to balance the artistic side and the religious one. So there are areas where we can go as tourists, taking pictures, taking videos and talking, areas where you can go but in silence, only to pray. This is a church. It means that everybody can attend a service here, everybody can celebrate, everybody can choose this church for his private celebrations. For example, you want to get married in St. Peter Basilica, you can. It's enough to reserve 2 years in advance, because the line is quite long, and choosing which one of the 24 side chapels you want to use. The 24 side chapels has the main altar, the one on top of the grave of Peter. It's only for the Mass of the Pope, that usually celebrates outside, but on Christmas, Easter, St. Peter and Paul Day, and other important Catholic feast, gives service inside the Basilica on top of the grave of Peter. Any kind of question? So, follow me this way. Easter, down there, and St. Paul of London, that's bigger, it's almost at the end. Actually, St. Paul in this moment is the third biggest Christian Catholic church in the world after St. Peter, and Sagrada Familia from Barcelona. That's not written down there because it wasn't consecrated yet when they wrote the news. Just come a bit closer. We stop for a while, as close as possible, to the funerary monument of Peter. Watch your steps. We stop for a while right here, in this corner, as from this perspective, I can show you a couple of interesting things. Just come a bit closer, and then I will give you time to take a good picture. Because from this point, you can see 3 interesting things. First of all, the canopy of St. Peter. 2,000 tons of solid bronze, 90 feet, 29 meters tall, made with the bronze coming from the roof of the Pantheon, that was actually recycled, melted, and used by Gian Lorenzo Bernini to make the funerary monument of Peter. During the kingdom of Pope Urban VIII, the one we met in the Tapestries Gallery, this canopy is right on top of the altar, where the Pope gives service, 120 feet on top of the body of St. Peter. So, if you enter in the Basilica and you say, okay, I follow the dome, but where is the body of Peter? Down there, 120 feet, under the canopy. The canopy is also under the dome, that you can see completely covered with mosaics. Everything you see is a stone, smaller than my nail, glued on the ceiling. These mosaics for the dome needed around 90 years to be accomplished, and they were designed by Cavalier d'Arpino, who was the master of Caravaggio, one of the greatest painters of the Italian Renaissance. As you can see very well, the scene where is Jesus, Mother Mary, John the Baptist, and the 4 gospel writers. You recognize Saint John in front of us, Saint Matthew on the left, and there are Mark and Luke on the other 2 sides. You can see also a gate down there. This is the entrance for the Vatican Group. So, if some of you later on, at the end of the tour, without the radio, wants to go in the undergrounds, there is a corridor that's actually passing 10 meters, 30 feet under this floor, where are the graves of some popes. Not only Pius VI, who was responsible of the collections, but more than all, Paul VI, Pius XI body, and some others like John Paul I, or like, for example, the former grave of John Paul II that used to be buried there, but now the body has been moved up right here. Once again, I invite you to go down there, to go without taking pictures and without having the radios, because it's a place dedicated to pictures. So no pictures and videos in the underground, while here you can freely do it. It's also possible to climb back to the Dome of St. Peter, 551 steps. So, on a staircase that's one way, this large and this tall. So you have to be very brave. In your case, you have to walk like this. Challenger. The view, anyway, is beautiful. My personal opinion, I did it when I was 15 years old. I did it once and I will never do it again, because it's like the most scary thing if you don't like narrow spaces. It's like this, you have a man in front of you, a man behind, and you can't go back until when you are not on the very top. Anyway, if you don't suffer for narrow spaces and you don't suffer for the heights, the view, it's beautiful, because it's 137 meters, 360 degrees. up to the top of the dome, where you see basically the small windows on top. How to arrive down there, if somebody's interested, very easy. Once we will finish the tour outside, instead of going in the square, you just go on the left side, where were the bathrooms. On the left side there is the entrance up to the dome. It's a ticket of like 10 euros that becomes 8 if you don't take the elevator that cuts the first 300 steps. If you cut the first 300 steps, 10 euros, and you can take the elevator, saving 300 steps on the 551. Anyway, for the last part, the one in which you walk like this, you have to go. There isn't the elevator down there. Any kind of question? Of the Immaculate Conception that you can see straight ahead in front of us. Oh, excuse me. Keep following me this way. We stop for a while in the middle of the basilica. Watch your steps while walking here, because the foot of this barrier are dangerous. You don't see them, you risk to fall down. We stop for a while nearby these barriers, because in the middle of this corridor you can see the names of all the longest churches in the world. Their dimension, their names in Latin of course, compared with St. Peter's Basilica. For example, you have in front of you California, Los Angeles Cathedral. Here there is Mexico City, Ferrara in Italy. There is Sydney, there is Brasilia, there is Westminster Cathedral of London. There is the dimension. You fly to California, you fly to Los Angeles, you carry here the cathedral, 120 minutes. Calculated by the windows.
Una foto de las escaleras y por ponerme en medio, ¿no? Ah.
自己心里的每个根筋手。
You can see that the symbol of Saint Paul is the sword, while the symbol of Saint Peter are the keys. Why? Peter, the keys of heaven, because actually when Jesus named Peter first pope, he formally gave him the keys of heaven with the famous words, whatever you will link on this planet will be chained in heaven, whatever you will solve will be solved in heaven. Saint Paul as the sword is another meaning. It's not because he was killed, cut in the head. This would be not nice. The reason is that Paul was considered the soldier of Christ, because Paul, in his letters, you read for sure, and in his words, in his speech, was particularly strong, particularly sometimes aggressive, but aggressive in a good meaning, to move people, and that's why considered the soldier of Christ is represented with the sword. And you will see in any representation we'll see today, Paul holding the sword on the shoulder in front of him.
I did one with the background and one with the background. Oh, good. Okay.
Messo.
Ready? Out. The one here. You can see the people apart.
Oh, mushroom run.
The one with the background. You can just...
هذا خليك ماشي يعني.
Ah, here the bell. I don't know why it was there. I don't know why. Exactly.
Ciao, che dai.
Sí, me habían comentado que era miércoles. Yo estaba seguro que era domingo.
Maurizio! Poi adesso sta dormendo.